Today, I will be presenting my research survey and data analysis on the topic of COVID-19 and its effects on social anxiety. Today's presentation breakdown will look like this. I will start by explaining my topic and why I chose it. I will then explain the methodology used and the survey target market. I will follow this with a brief summary of my research questions along with a link to my research questionnaire. Then I will present the data analysis of my questionnaire and key findings that came out of it. And finally, I will wrap up with a brief conclusion. The topic I chose to research was COVID-19 and its effects on social anxiety. I want to know if people are reporting higher levels of social anxiety now during the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as how they feel about returning to the normal world after the COVID-19 pandemic is over. By now, almost every human on the planet knows what the COVID-19 virus is. It was first identified just over a year ago in December 2019 in China. It made its way to Canada shortly thereafter, with the first reported case happening in February of 2020. By March of 2020, the Canadian government had issued a country-wide lockdown to stop the spread of the virus. Currently here in Ontario, different regions are in different restrictions based on the number of cases in the area. Recently, there has been hopeful news regarding vaccines coming to Canada in the near future. Social anxiety is a mental condition characterized by the fear of being around or judged by others, a common anxiety disorder that millions of people struggle with. Symptoms include fear, anxiety, and even panic attacks when having to be around others. It can range in severity, some people feeling slightly anxious or worried when in social settings, and others not even being able to be in social settings due to the intense amount of anxiety or panic they feel. Causes of social anxiety disorder include genetics, poor socialization as a child, trauma, or other mental illnesses, such as PTSD and depression. The reason I chose to study COVID-19 and its effects on social anxiety is because I myself have been feeling symptoms of social anxiety disorder for the first time in my life just this year. When trying to learn why these symptoms have manifested and talking to my friends and family about them, I've realized that a lot of people have been feeling the same way I have since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. The method I chose to study this research question was primary data collection using a survey. My survey contained 35 questions that were both qualitative and quantitative. Questions ranged from scales, multiple choice, and even short answer. The survey was then posted on my own personal Facebook account. 98 people responded to my survey within just 5 days. The target audience of my survey was adults over the age of 18 that currently live in Canada. At the bottom here is a link to my survey as well. Although I will not have time to go through each research question during this presentation, I will highlight some of the most important survey questions that respondents were asked. And here are a list of these questions. What type of area do you currently reside in, city, small town, or rural, was an important question to ask as different areas in Canada have different social restrictions right now, which may affect social anxiety levels. Are you currently working or doing school from home was another important question to ask. I wanted to ask this question to see how many people are leaving their homes every day versus how many people are working or doing school from their homes. Respondents were also asked which part of their lives were most affected by COVID-19. Seeing family, friends, running errands, going to school, or going to work were the categories. Another important question was, how would you rate your level of social anxiety before the COVID-19 pandemic? This also connects to the question of how would you rate your level of social anxiety now during the COVID-19 pandemic? Another set of connecting questions were, how do you feel in public places during the COVID-19 pandemic versus how much did you enjoy going to large events before COVID-19? And the final important question to highlight would be, in one word, how would you describe your emotional well-being throughout the COVID-19 pandemic? For the data analysis, there are 4 key findings that I would like to highlight. First of all, I want to focus on the data collected from the question, in one word, how would you describe your emotional well-being throughout the COVID-19 pandemic? For this question, I took all of the one-word responses and created a word cloud. As you can see, the common themes in these answers were roller coaster, inconsistent, poor, exhausted, and unstable. None of the most given answers were positive ways to describe one's emotional well-being during the pandemic. This question showed me right off the bat that people were really struggling with their mental health right now. Now, to get more specific, I wanted to see how people were feeling in terms of social anxiety, not just how they were feeling overall. I had to analyze what type of lifestyle my respondents are currently living. Do they leave their house often or hardly at all? And how much has COVID affected their life habits, such as seeing friends and family? Looking at the answers to these questions, I can clearly see that COVID-19 has affected daily life for almost everyone. Over half of respondents are now working or doing school from home. How much COVID-19 has affected people's ability to see family, friends, and go to school? The majority of respondents answered quite a lot. When it came to going to work and running errands, respondents answered somewhat and no, not at all. However, having quite a lot as the most common answer for 3 out of 5 of these lifestyle questions, it is very clear that COVID-19 is affecting our socialization and way of life. Now we must find out if these changes are affecting social anxiety levels. To quickly find out if there has been an increase in social anxiety levels, I asked 2 questions. How would you rate your social anxiety levels before the COVID-19 pandemic? And how would you rate your social anxiety levels now during the COVID-19 pandemic? Both of these questions were rated on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being not anxious at all, and 5 being extremely anxious. Looking at the data from these 2 questions, you can clearly see the shift. Before the pandemic, people rated lower levels of social anxiety compared to now, when most people are rating high levels of social anxiety. In these graphs, you can visually see the shift in how people are feeling in terms of social anxiety levels. Another thing I wanted to study was how people are feeling about returning to a highly socialized, large events going on world. I compared 2 other questions to find this information. First was, how much did you enjoy going to large social events before the COVID-19 pandemic? For example, concerts and conferences. And the follow-up question was, do you think you will attend large events after the COVID-19 pandemic, such as concerts and conferences? Looking at this data, only 9.1% of people rated low on the scale of enjoying large events before COVID-19. However, since the pandemic, people have clearly changed their minds. Now, 22.4% of people are saying they will not attend these large events once the pandemic is over. This trend clearly shows that more people are feeling anxious, nervous, or just plain dislike for large social events since the pandemic. As the world goes back to normal, people may again change their minds, but as of right now, there is a growing dislike for large events. Now, there were a lot of errors in my survey that I have found both going through the survey questions once again, as well as completing the data analysis. First of all, I have a biased target market as I shared my survey on my own personal social media page. I probably know most of the people who actually answered my survey. Second of all, I should have added more comparison questions to see how people felt about social situations before versus now during the COVID-19 pandemic. This would have further showed me if the pandemic has increased social anxiety levels. I also could have expanded upon my introduction in my actual survey to further explain what social anxiety was to my respondents. My final error, which was in my opinion my largest error, was that a lot of my questions in the end did not help me with my research topic. Questions such as, do you experience depression, were not at all useful in the end, as I wasn't studying depression, but social anxiety instead. Narrowing down my research questions and being better focused would be changes to implement in my next research survey. However, overall, I was able to reach my research objectives, which were to find out if COVID-19 is affecting social anxiety levels. Which, yes, it is, as more people are reporting feeling social anxiety now as opposed to before the COVID-19 pandemic. For my research objective as to how COVID-19 will affect social habits long-term, the data shows that more people are feeling unease, nervousness, or just general unwant in regards to going to large social events after the pandemic is over. I would like to end my presentation on a positive note, as I truly believe we all need a little bit more happiness in our lives right now. Now, I know this wasn't really part of the assignment, nor did it help me research my objective, but this was my favorite part of my entire survey. The last question on my survey was, what is one thing you are grateful for that has happened during the COVID-19 pandemic? And I wanted to share with you my 7 favorite answers, because we all really need to hear some positivity right now. Appreciating how grateful I am to have my health, education, family, and friends. I get to live at home with my family, but mainly my 10-year-old sister, who I love watching grow up, and now I get to be there for her every day. Slowing down and appreciating the little things. Becoming closer to my partner and building our relationship together. The birth of my twins. Having extra time to focus on hobbies. And my favorite, people are nice when they see you walking on the road. This is so true, as I'm from a small town and I've met so many nice people this year, as we're all just out and about for walks all the time. And finally, I would just like to say thank you for taking the time to watch my presentation. Happy holidays, and I'm wishing you nothing but health and happiness this year and into the new year. Thank you.